Welcome to the Prosperity for America channel. I'm Greg Schmidt with Prosperity HR Systems. We're a national recruiting firm that specializes in engineering, operations management, and executive positions, mostly permanent. Once in a while, we'll do temp to perm. But we thought it would be great with our Prosperity for America channel to put out some videos on how to interview for specific types of engineering positions. For example, there are different things that a chemical engineer will be asked versus a mechanical engineer. Different things that a software engineer will be asked versus a controls engineer. And we wanted to go over those kinds of things because we work with it every day, and you probably only look for a position every once in a few years, maybe even longer. So let's get started. First of all, I do want to preface as we get started to talk about people that are fresh grads versus people that have any experience of substance. Fresh grads, just a piece of advice. You really want to focus on interviewing and talking about your thinking process and the technologies that you were educated in during the interviewing process. On a just advice note, you really, as a chemical engineer, want to take a position in a chemical engineering role that is in a chemical production facility to get your career off to a good start. We've seen too many people over the last 20 or 30 years start out as a quality tech or a lab tech, thinking that they'll get promoted into engineering, and they end up not having the career that they should have because they don't really get to learn chemical process engineering or plant engineering and have experience with it. But on the other side of the coin, if you do get good, solid process engineering experience and plant engineering experience as a chemical engineer in a chemical production facility, you could have an incredible, well-paying career as a chemical engineer. So now let's talk about the interview itself. The interview itself will be a blend of technical questions, attitudinal questions, and process questions. A lot of times when you interview for a position, you feel pressure to know exactly about the type of chemical that the company produces, and that's really not critical, really, and as long as you have experience in a chemical production facility. And let's just use the for instance of interviewing for a chemical process engineering position. So, what will you be asked? They're going to want to know what kind of processes that you've worked with, whether it's batch or continuous. Doesn't matter which, but people will ask that because people at companies like to know that the person could come in and help out right away. For that reason, actually, one of the great things to do is to actually ask them some questions. And how that might sound and feel and look is typically people that are interviewing that are for a technical position, you're going to be interviewed by a technical person on the technical areas. HR might ask you the personality questions, attitudinal type questions, but at the same token, they're going to leave the technical positions mostly to be handled by the department head that you probably will be reporting to. That being said, once you are in front of this person that's interviewing you, they'll probably start out with something so basic like, tell me about yourself. Really, they should be more prepared than that. But what you need to do is be prepared yourself to be able to make sure you could talk about the things that you know how to do. If they start out by saying, tell me about yourself, then give them a summary answer, but then be ready to ask a question that I highly recommend that you ask. So how that might go is, well, I have 3 years experience in a chemical process production facility that makes, titanium dioxide. All right, which doesn't matter what type of chemical, just tell them what kind you worked with. And then say that I worked with troubleshooting manufacturing processes. I really enjoy the work. And then you turn around and ask them a question. What do you need done and how could I help you the most? This will begin a dialogue as opposed to you just answering a question and then waiting for the next question. The healthiest way to actually get offered a position is actually to get into a discussion about how you can meet the needs of that particular position. So by asking, what do you need done and how can I help the most? You're giving an impression right away that you're interested in making a difference, all right? Having an actual impact, even right as you walk in the door as a new employee. Highly, highly recommend that you get at that at the earliest possible moment within the interview. You never want to be in a position where you start interviewing the interviewer. That's why you want to make sure that they ask a question, you answer it, but then you begin a dialogue by asking, what do you need done and how can I help the most? 9 times in 10, that employer, that hiring authority, will tell you, we need somebody that could do this, this, and this. Now, don't get all hung up on the idea that I need to do those exact things. What you want to do is, there's a lot of similarities from one chemical production facility to the other. Talk about what you've done that would be similar. Now, a big thing that's really important that amazingly a lot of people don't do is actually do a little research on the production processes that are needed for the specific chemical that the company you're interviewing at makes. YouTube is the most wonderful source for that. There's almost a YouTube video on everything and how it's made. So if you know beforehand what kind of processes that you're going to have in the facility that you are going to apply for and be interviewed for, and you do a little bit of homework, you could find out exactly how your experience relates. And that is exactly what you'd want to do during that process where they tell you what they need done, what they make, where it's used, and then you say, well, that's terrific because I've done this, this, and this, and I really enjoy that kind of work. And then think of another question, like what kind of problems do you typically run into in the manufacture of your product? Because I know what we run into when we manufacture titanium dioxide, but I'm just curious, what kind of problems do you run into? So from there, you go into a conversation probably. Now you're into where you're really talking about how you actually could do the job. That is a very terrific position to be in within the first 5 to 10 minutes of an interview. Now let's talk about, for a few minutes, the idea that you might meet more than one person during the interviewing process. What I mean by that is you might talk to the person you would report to, but you also might talk to a few peers. And each person you talk to is really very important. Typically, you'll talk to perhaps an HR person first, and then the department head that you would report to, and then from there maybe a peer or two. All that being said, each person you talk to, you might handle just a little bit differently, but at the same token, you might be asked the same questions over and over again by different people. That's assuming that you're meeting with them separately. We'll have another whole video on how to handle interviews where you're interviewing with several interviewers at once. That's a tougher way to go, but it's very much similar in many ways, but I do want you to make sure that you have a way to deal with that. So let's talk about the difference between interviewing with who is the person you would be reporting to and a peer. What you'd want to do actually with the peer is ask early on after you're introduced to them and you settle into your chair, so how would you and I collaborate day to day with one another? And they will tell you. I mean, they're not going to hold back information. They're going to want to talk. They're usually there to give whoever you meet, an idea whether or not you'd fit into the department. And a good approach is to find out how you and that person would collaborate. And then from there, ask them, if I were the person chosen, how could I make your life easier? That way, they could tell you what they're hoping for. What the different people you meet in an interviewing process are hoping for is usually a little different for each person. So if you could find out with each person that you meet what they're looking for, that's a little different, and you might not want to phrase it that way, but I think is the best way is what I just said, and that is, how could I make your life a little easier if I were the person chosen? Now, in this process, you really need to win over everyone. They'll never say that, but if you interview with 3 people, usually companies need you to have all 3 people like you. So that's why it is so important to ask how you can make their life easier. Ask them how you would collaborate with one another. And then, and that way, if you're helping them in a way that they need to be helped, if you ask for things that show that you're interested in their situation for their role and how you and them might work together, that increases the chances very much that you'll get a chance to win that decision process 3-0. Because for some reason, I've just noticed you don't really win 2-1. Department heads usually like to have everyone like the person that they'll work with. You do see it happen, but I'm just trying to give you a strategy that will work more often than not. Now, as you get into towards the end of the process, usually money comes up. And I just want to share with you that, there's a lot of books written on how to interview. And it's ironic to me that I very seldom hear this piece of information that I'm about to share brought up very much. But the question is, when do you talk about money? And my recommendation is right after you know that you're the person that they want to choose. That's actually when you're going to have the most leverage to get the most offer money-wise, because now, since they've decided you're the one, that's when they make that mental transfer to where they want to make sure you come in happy. If you force talking about money too early, before you've established that you're the right person for the job, what they're going to do is fall back to a parameter, which probably is usually on the conservative side, and you'll actually gyp yourself out of a potential chance to get just a little bit more at the end. So, in closing, make sure that whoever you meet with, every single person you meet with, knows that you would really like the position. I'm not saying to say that no matter what if you don't feel that way, all right? What I'm saying is it's very helpful for them, whoever you interview with, to feel that you would like to work there and know that you would like to work there and that you're excited to be there. Nobody likes to hire someone that's kind of lukewarm and doesn't show any enthusiasm or interest. So what you want to do is really make sure they know that you would really love to work there and that you wouldn't let them down. You'd really work hard to make sure that you were able to meet the needs of the position. So in closing, if you have any further questions or thoughts, don't hesitate to contact the recruiter that you've been working with here with Prosperity HR Systems, or email me or one of our recruiters and just ask some questions. Whether we're involved in the interviewing process, but you've sent us your resume, we'd be glad to help. So once again, I wanted to just thank you for listening, and hope that you tune in. We're going to have several more videos on how to interview and how to get a better offer. And we'd love it if you needed some help, that we were able to help you. Have a great day.